If the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour.
We stand for Queen, country, and video games. BRB UK. Worse teeth, better accents.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Big Red Barrel UK podcast, episode 245.5. That means it's an extra episode. That means I'm not really here. I'm just here to do like this line and then another line afterwards, and then I bugger off. Dan's not here either. It's just Tim. It's Tim and a guest, and this time his guest is Mr. Paul Roberts, who's a very nice man, from Framestore. And he works with visual effects on some amazing movies you might have heard of, like Doctor Strange, the most recent Beauty and the Beast movie, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Thor Ragnarok is the upcoming one he's working up, but this time he's here to talk about a little-known movie you might have heard about. An indie movie, didn't really get a lot of coverage, but hopefully you've heard of it. It's called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, so there will be much excitement to be had. Anyway, I'm going to throw it over to Tim, and then you'll hear me come back and say weird things like social links and what have you. Oh, and obviously, there might be some mild spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Bye!
Hello, and welcome to another half episode of Big Red Barrel UK. Although it's half an episode, it'll be full of content, and we've got a slightly different interview than I've done before. Anyone that doesn't know, I think every interview that I've previously done has generally been video game focused, and this is a slight departure from that, because we have Paul Roberts, who has worked on, and I'm going to get this right, the visual effects on Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Welcome, sir.
Hi Tim, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Safe to have you along. And as I kind of alluded to there, it's definitely visual effects rather than special effects, which you corrected me on when we were setting up this interview. Just for the benefit of everyone else's education, anyone else that may be as stupid as I am, can you just clarify what the difference between the two is?
So special effects is practical effects.
Right.
So explosions and things like that were actually conducted on set, whereas visual effects is the digital effects that are added on in post-production.
Okay, see, now I thought everything you did was kind of special effects and I labelled it as such. I have been educated now. I know the difference. This is good. I've already learnt from you, Paul, and we haven't even kicked off the interview yet. For anyone who doesn't know, we're kind of friendly through Tabletop Tuesday. You come along to our board game event and have done for quite some time now, I think, no?
Yeah, it's been a few years now, I think, since I first started coming.
You are what I would refer to as a regular.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely.
It's always good to see you. I can always tell when you're very busy at work, because then we're either less likely to see you or you go home early. One of the two.
Yeah, that's generally the case.
Okay, and if we can just go down. So what's the actual company you work for, and what's your job title within the company as well?
So I work for a company called Framestore, and I'm assistant technical director there.
And mainly looking to discuss, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, because it's awesome. But yeah, can you just go through any other films that you've worked on previously as well then?
So I worked on Beauty and the Beast, which was out earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked on various other films, did a little bit of work on Doctor Strange, but it's very minor, sort of, you can only really see it in the background, sort of thing. But yeah, there's such a wide variety of projects that we do at Framestore, and I've had a hand in quite a few of the recent ones.
Now, they all sound like Disney properties, but your company works on other films other than Disney stuff as well, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we did a bit of work on Fantastic Beasts as well.
Alex would be very pleased with that one. And what was your favourite scene that you worked on prior to Guardians of the Galaxy 2?
I would say it would probably be the Be Our Guest sequence in Beauty and the Beast. Mainly because...
You got to sing the song every day at work?
Oh, no. That would... I think if you sang it every day, that would be intense. No, it was mainly because Beauty and the Beast was the first film I saw in the cinema.
Right, okay, as in this is going back to the original Disney cartoon then, basically, yeah?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so that's quite exciting to then work on a kind of, what's the correct term on this? Is it real life version? I'm not sure that's the best phrase for it.
Live action remake, I suppose, would be.
Okay, right. So yeah, that must be nice to work on the live action remake of something that was a kind of treasured childhood memory to you kind of thing, no?
Yeah, I mean, because it was the first film I ever saw, I had very vivid memories of certain scenes, and then getting to work on those scenes myself in a sort of homage and remake to the original was definitely very special.
Cool. Yeah, that must have been really nice, actually. So what's your sort of typical working day like? Like, what do you actually sort of do day to day?
It is very different every day.
Okay.
Some days can involve doing various different tasks. It's usually helping the supervisors. They usually give us tasks on a day-to-day basis through various messaging services. They will say, these are things we'd like you to do. They come in usually as tickets, things like that.
Okay.
To have like a ticketing system, and they can be ordered on priority based on how urgent they are.
It sounds like restaurant business.
Well, it is in a way. It's sort of like, this needs to be done by such and such a time, so move this to the top of the queue and then get this one delivered at such and such a time. The task can vary between a 5-minute job to this is going to be a few months work. It's a massive script or something like that. So,
but then what the task that you're actually doing then? Is it literally kind of just, you know, working with the computer and drawing things basically from scratch, or?
It's more technical than that, I would say. Generally involves something along the lines of taking a case from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. There's the opening shot, which is about 11 different cameras, but it was one shot, one camera initially, which was then split into 11, and then I stitched them back together into one camera.
Okay.
So that was done with a script, Python script. That's coding, essentially.
That's definitely at the very outer limits of my knowledge of how things work in the world. But then I came out of the cinema saying that the intro sequence may have been my favourite opening credits of all time. And that was prior to me knowing that you'd worked on it, I will point out as well. But was that as fun to work on as it was to watch?
Definitely. It was brilliant seeing it in the cinema. Seeing everything come together was just amazing.
And then, yeah, can you think of a better opening sequence?
The only one that springs to mind is Star Wars. Because I think for me,
the call and the kind of then the ship flying overhead sort of thing. I guess that's very iconic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think Guardians has its own tone, and I think the opening for me was set the tone for the rest of the film.
And if anything, I think the Guardians one was maybe slightly less iconic, but a hell of a lot more fun. But yeah, that's not a bad answer. I'll give you that one. Just going back to your kind of your work and sort of how you're done. It's sort of how carefully directed is your contribution? Is it literally every step of the way you're kind of guided, or do you get sort of creative freedom, or do you have to be kind of very careful of how your work fits in alongside everyone else's, basically? It
depends. Because it's so technical, it usually involves, it's very sort of like, this is what we would like you to do, and it's laid out exactly in that way, and there's no deviation from that. But sometimes you might get a request from a supervisor that says something like, make it look cool. in which case you're open to a variety of different interpretations of that.
Yeah.
For example, like, make it so that Rocket is in shot for this particular scene, in which case you've got to make sure that the camera's looking at him for the whole shot and not sort of veering off somewhere else. So there's a certain level of creativity, but the role that I do is usually leans towards the side of step by step.
That actually sounds a bit more like sort of video game cutscene creation than I actually thought it would be as well, actually, when you're deciding where the camera is within that environment as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think both video games and films have learnt a lot from each other, and there's a lot of overlap between the two branches, as it were. Because games are obviously getting a lot more cinematic and a lot more story-driven now, so they're looking to film and seeing, okay, how do they do it in film? How do they portray that emotion or that sort of thing? So,
and as I say, yeah, one learning off the other and teaching the other one what they can do a little bit, type of thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's true.
Let's go dial it back a bit as well. What actual scenes did you work on within Guardians of the Galaxy 2? And yeah, what do you think? Which scenes did you actually have a hand on and actually change yourself, sort of thing?
So I worked mainly on the opening sequence, the bit with Groot dancing, and the space chase sequence with the Sovereign ships.
Oh, okay. So that was the bit with all the different sort of computer-controlled ship type things, basically, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. So I wrote quite a few scripts to assist the animators when they were controlling the swarms of ships, because there were obviously so many. We needed to work out a way of so that the animators can move them, but they also had to look realistic. Even though they're not real, they needed to move in a way that was maybe like an aircraft.
Right, yeah.
Roll, pitch, and yaw, that kind of thing. So,
and yeah, it's even if they're fantastical ships, they have to move in a realistic manner that looks correct to people viewing it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if it's wrong, then you'd know straight away. That sort of thing is really apparent.
Is that something where I always found, and I mentioned the restaurant industry because it's something I worked in previously as well, and I found when I went out to restaurants, I couldn't enjoy the dining experience as much. Do you find that it's something where, are you able to still enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy 2 having worked on it, or does it actually boost your enjoyment more kind of, having seen scenes that you've actually worked on and coming to a full fruition as part of a full package as well, basically?
I think definitely the latter.
Yeah.
Because you appreciate how much work has gone into each sequence. And also being able to see shots that you worked on yourself is just such a massive boost, definitely. To see months and months of work finally come together in this is amazing.
Yeah, there must be nice feeling, yeah. But then does it also have the kind of, is it slightly tinged with you're looking at other scenes that you didn't work on and you're maybe not as able to concentrate on the story because you're like, oh, I wonder how they did that and stuff like that?
I don't really know if that's the case so much. I think you're generally able to, you can shut off to a certain extent. And
that's good. I'm glad movies haven't been ruined for you by working in the movies, basically, kind of thing. That's good to know. And okay, which one part that that either you put your own touch on or your own kind of flair to, or just that you feel is mostly yours? What's the one thing you're most proud of, basically?
I've got to say it's probably difficult, actually. I was going to say that it's the opening sequence because I put the most work into that. I'm quite proud of the swarm as well, but I think I think it's got to be the opening sequence.
Just because that's just so fun, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that come from previs to a fully fledged sequence, photorealistic with all the Guardians in the scene, and it's just a great little sequence.
Yeah, as I said, possibly one of my favourites of all time, or well, if not my favourite of all time, definitely well up there in the top 3 or 5 sort of thing. But yeah, really did like it. So yeah, very good. And I think that's something you can definitely be proud of with good justification, basically.
Thanks.
Now, this is one thing I'm curious about. When you're working on the film, did you get to, and especially in that scene where it's one that you're working on, did you get to hear the soundtrack while you were working on the scenes, or is that something that's kept carefully under wraps that you're not allowed to hear beforehand, sort of thing?
Well, because the sequence is so dependent on the audio, yes, we do get to hear it.
Okay, that's interesting. I as I say, like I would have thought that would be something, obviously within the movies they need to try and keep their secrecy, and the soundtrack was obviously something that I think people really kind of gelled on the first one and really loved from the first film. I even had a couple of the tracks from the first soundtrack at my wedding, so I can definitely leave that. But yeah, I just wondered that people being such an integral part of the film, one, whether they would be protective of it, but two, yeah, as you say, it's so integral to that sequence. I couldn't see how they couldn't let you know that was part of the sequence, no?
Yeah, because the animators have got to time Groot's movements to the soundtrack. There would be no way they could do it without. It was the same with Beauty and the Beast, Be Our Guest. The whole audio track was there so that the animators could time what they're doing, lip sync and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, yeah, as I say, that makes sense. I was just, wasn't sure if that would necessarily be the case or not. But yeah, that's good to know. Good to know. So, do you think that helped with working on the scene? Not just in terms of, actually technically getting it right, but just in making it more fun, and you got to listen to that tune again and again, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I love the song, and I still love the song. So
Good.
That is a good sign, definitely.
Yeah, it's not too bad. And yeah, as far as you're aware, how does working on movie visual effects differ from working on video games? And we kind of alluded to this a little bit before, but what's the sort of, there are some similarities, as we said, between working on cutscenes, but what do you think is the major difference in working on a movie?
Well, I guess with movies, it's all pre-rendered.
Right.
That's one of the main things, and it's every frame has got so much. The level of detail is probably higher. So you've got more advanced shaders and things like that. Okay. I mean, the games engines are very good at the moment, but they still can't achieve the same sort of level.
Okay. Does that mean it takes longer to work on, or you just need sort of higher powered computers to do so, sort of thing?
Probably both.
Bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, do you think video game designers and developers could benefit from sort of having direct access to a studio like yours, to a proper visual effects department?
I think there's definitely room for collaboration, especially with things like VR that are coming into play.
Okay.
There's a greater level of crossover between what's possible in real time compared to what's possible pre-rendered, and eventually the two will probably meet.
Okay, and why particularly in VR then? Is that just because you've got the 360-degree environment, and because of the level of immersion then?
Well, it's a different medium again, which is sort of a hybrid of the two in a way, because you can have it pre-rendered, but you're not directing the audience, because in a film you're directing the audience with a static camera. The camera moves, but it's always looking at what you want it to look at, whereas in games and VR, the audience can look wherever they want.
Right. Okay. So yeah, it's less. You get less control over where they're looking and stuff. Then basically.
Yeah.
Interesting. Right. And yeah. Well, I had to say I was quite excited at the end of the film, sitting there, and it's something I do in video games a lot, because I know quite a few people that work in video games, and it tends to be more towards the end of the credits of a video game that I'll know people within, like, sort of, a PR department, or occasionally I know people that, have worked on a game and stuff like that, but generally speaking, it's not something that I'm quite so familiar with movies. So I was quite excited when I was sitting in the cinema and I was kind of looking out for it, and I spotted your name in the credits under the visual effects kind of area type thing. Was that, yeah, well, one, did you manage to see yourself? And two, is that nice? Is that cool to see your name come up on a cinema screen type thing?
Yes and yes. Always. They are sometimes in alphabetical order, so
right, that might help
somewhat prepare for that. And yeah, seeing your name in the credits is just such a boost. It's a great thing.
Yeah, I think movie credits these days are probably not quite as long as video game credits. Video game credits can go on for a long time. I guess that's because, I've only just thought about this, I guess though that's because a lot of the time the various international versions of movies, you only get like the one version's credits, whereas video games tend to mention everyone that was involved in the video game. Potentially. Not sure that's necessarily the case, but hey. But yeah, anyway, right, well, look, thank you very much for dropping in and giving us some information on that. My last question, though, is, is there any chance you can, as much as I'd like to have you here, is there any chance you can go away more quickly and get on with the sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy? Because I need more Teenage Groot in my life as soon as possible.
Well, we'll have to wait for James Gunn to finish the script first. But in the meantime, I've got a little bit of work on Thor Ragnarok.
Nice. Oh, that's your next one, hey? I know him. He's a friend from work, as it happens. So, But yeah, I have to say I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, incidentally, that seems like something, and I don't know how much you can talk about this yet, so don't feel too pressured to do so, but it does seem like the kind of rainbow space effects, if that's the right terminology type thing, that was in kind of Guardians is something that's is traveling over to a bit of the Thor Ragnarok as well type of thing. It does seem that's that's a kind of colour guide to space type thing.
Yeah, it does seem that way, definitely. The marketing seems to be leaning towards that.
Yeah, and that is one I'm definitely really looking forward to. And knowing that you're working on it, and I can get excited about seeing your name in the credits again, which is nice because it also gives me something to do while I'm waiting for the end credit sequence as well. So that's extra good. But yeah, well, cool. Look, thank you very much, Paul. As I said, that was a departure from the norm for me, but I thought this would be of particular interest to our audience. And thank you very much for coming along and answering our questions as well.
You're very welcome.
And I will see you next Tuesday.
You will.
Anyway, thank you very much, Paul. We'll have you back in the future post Thor Ragnarok as well, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. Cheers, Paul. We'll see you soon.
And that's your lot. Told you that Paul Roberts is a charming little fellow, isn't he? If you want to know more about Framestore, the company that does all the cool effects and things, go over to framestore.com, and that will give you an insight into all the cool movies that they're working on at the moment, or have indeed worked on before. Anyway, we will be back to normal on Friday, myself, Tim and Dan, all doing audio ramblings of the video game variety into your ear holes, which should be nice because, movies? What the hell happened? What are we talking about movies? Talking about video games. Anyway, yes, so to check out more podcasts, go over to BigRedBarel.com. You can talk to us on there via the forums and what have you, and while you're there, listen to other such podcasts like Flicks and Boom and Geek Speak and Barrelcast, and you can also check out the cool articles and videos and things like that and stuff and ting. Also, if you are of the social variety, then please go over to facebook.com/BigRedBarel. There you can go and check out all the cool posts that we put up on the site and some little extra things we tend to do every now and then. And the same for Twitter. If you're a bit of a Twitter, go over to twitter.com/BigRedBarel or @BigRedBarel is the handle. And there you can find things. Anyway, this has been episode 245.5. Getting a few of these half episodes out, aren't we? I think it's to delay the time of us putting out 250. We just throw this stuff at you. I don't know. Let us know if you like that. I have been Coleman. That was a Tim. That was a Paul Roberts. And until Friday, dear listeners, a goodbye.
You and your ears are quite welcome for the podcasting goodness that you just heard. Why not roll on over to BigRedBarel.com for more podcasts, news, reviews, and videos from the biggest, reddest site on the internet, BigRedBarel.com.